Hi, friends. Welcome to the Mobile Bev Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing mobile bar professionals with the information they need to succeed. I'm your host and fellow mobile bar owner, Sarah Murphy. Each episode, I'll be bringing you interviews, knowledge, anecdotes, or opinions with the goal of assisting you in building a profitable, sustainable, and scalable mobile bar business that will support the lifestyle you dream of. I'm excited for today's episode, so let's get started. Today on the podcast, I'm here with Alan Berg, who's a wedding industry expert, podcast host, prolific author, and renowned public speaker. We're talking today about some of his favorite topics to speak on, which is how to sell more, profit more, get ghosted less, and convert more leads. Welcome to the podcast, Alan.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me on. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
You might be the biggest name that we've ever had on the podcast. So I'm really excited and not just a little nervous. I came prepared with a whole list of questions in case, I got a little starstruck and wasn't sure what to say. But first, let's start with the fact that you've got a new book coming out. So you have 6 currently on the market and you have a 7th coming out very shortly.
Yes, it's a great story. And I actually just recorded one of my own podcasts that's called This is the Book You Helped Me Write. And what would happen is people would come up to me at a conference or at a meeting or wherever they saw me, and they would say, which of your books has this in it? And if it was one of my current books, I'd say, oh, that's in Shut Up and Sell More, or that's in Why Are They Ghosting Me? And if it wasn't, I'd say, oh, it's in the next one. And I would just write it down. And I started making a list of all these things people asked me for, like, how do you respond to a bad review? Or maybe they saw me speak and said, hey, that was a great speech. Which of your books talks about that? And if it wasn't in a book, I'd say it's in the next one. So I almost called it the next one, but instead I called it Stop Selling and Help Them Buy Weddings and Events. And the subtitle is for people who love doing events more than selling them. And the concept partly started as a book for people who hate selling. I was like, well, maybe you don't hate selling, but you might love having a mobile bar better, or you might love being a photographer better, or you might love cooking better. So I didn't want to make it for people who hate selling, because you might not hate it, but it might not be your favorite part to get to the part you love, which is doing what you do. Why did you create a mobile bar? Is because you love doing it, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah. I teach a little bit, not to what you do, but I teach about shifting the mindset around selling. Because I think, at least in the mobile bar industry, which I can speak to with authority, is that we get a lot of creatives and we get a lot of people who are super passionate about what they do. And so they create a business around something because they've basically bought into the fact that I want to, do what I love and never work a day in my life. Right. And then they're like, but now I actually have to sell, and I hate selling. I hate sales. That's not why I do this. I love what I do. And so I try and pivot their frame of thought in that you're not selling, you're serving. If you are really as good at what you do as you say you are, then you're doing them a service by enabling them to have access to your zone of genius. And sometimes that moves the needle a little bit. But what other themes have you seen about people's resistance to sales that you address in your books and in your trainings?
It's funny. The subtitle of the book almost was for people who love to serve more than they love to sell. And I ran that by a bunch of people, and it resonated with the people you're talking about, with the creatives. It didn't necessarily resonate as much as, like, what does that mean? Like, what does serve mean? Because service could be volunteering. Service could be at your particular house of worship or whatever. So what did serve mean? So I was like, And then of course the caterers serving means something totally different, because or at the bars, right? Bartenders, we're serving them drinks there. So I have the table of contents here of the new book. And the first chapter in the book is what is selling. And the second is, if it feels like selling, you're doing it wrong. And the next one is selling can be creative. And the next is, be the salesperson you wish you had when you're the customer. And the next one is, but what if I don't want to do sales, right? So I'm addressing those things specifically there, because this was kind of the genesis of this for people who hate selling. So what you described as how someone got into the mobile bar business is pretty much how most people get into the wedding and event industry. They're really good at or passionate about fill in the blank. Invitations, flowers, photos, video, music, right? They're passionate about cooking. They're passionate about fashion, right? That doesn't qualify you to be in business. You being the exception with 2 advanced degrees, right? Most people don't come into the industry with that, or maybe their advanced degree is in art or design or something like that. It's not necessarily in this. And the thing is, for a lot of people, it's a sideline that becomes a full-time thing, right? It's your side hustle that becomes a full-time thing. And there's a big difference between having a side hustle and a full-time thing, or at least you should treat the side hustle as a business. Most people don't. Most people are like, oh, that's cool. We got extra money. Here we go. That's kind of fun. And then when it becomes the full-time thing, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. We need salespeople, or we need accountants, and we need lawyers, and we need all these other things. So the idea of, I don't really like the selling part, is to understand what you're really selling is the results that you provide that nobody else can provide. And that doesn't mean a mobile bar, because other people provide mobile bars and bartending services. Other people do that. And if you don't understand, or can't own why people choose you to provide those results, then nothing you're selling is unique, and the lower price is going to win. It has to win. It should win. When we're customers, the lower price wins when there's no other perceived difference. When there is a perceived difference, then you will pay more money to get other results. I actually did a podcast. Are your results, I think it's actually a chapter in here, are your results really better, or are they just different? And the truth is, we'll never know if they're better, because that event is only going to happen that time, and nobody else is bringing their bar. So how will we know if somebody did a better job? Because they didn't. The customer has to perceive that I want your results. And when they do, they have to pay your price. And that's when you understand as a business when you have pricing power and what you're selling that's unique, because otherwise it's a commodity.
Oh, I speak on this topic all the time about the difference between convenience and different, and luxury and commodity. And so I love that you've brought that up. And there's about 50% of people who get into the mobile bar industry that were bartenders, and they're like, I can do this, and I'm going to do this for events. And the other 50%, or at least the other 50% that is drawn to my community, they're people who serve from other industries, teachers, nurses, pharmacists, people who get burnt out in the service industry and want to do something that they perceive to be fun and work in beautiful scenarios and are creative outlets. They're not salespeople.
Yeah.
And they're not marketers in most cases. And so looking at what they're doing and then creating messaging that is results driven, to your point, is a real challenge for them. So how would you recommend that people take a look at what they're doing and then create that results driven messaging for their ideal client?
Oh, great question. If you're not brand new, right? If you're brand new and you've never done any work, it's hard to say what's different, because now it's the look of my bar, right? Whether it's the horse trailer, or whether it's the cute old European little three-wheeled, whatever, right? But if you've been doing it for a while, the easiest and best place to find out why you're different and what people perceive about what's different about you is to look at the reviews, the thank you notes, the things that people post on social, the things that people say to you. This is where your difference is, because we don't get to define our brand. We get to define our branding, but we don't get to define our brand. So if anybody, I don't know if this is video or audio or both, but if I stand above my microphone, you see the logo on my shirt, this is branding. The fact that over my shoulder it says Wedding Business Solutions and www.allenberg.com is branding. So whenever I'm on a podcast, whenever I do my own podcast, whenever I make a video recording, my logo is over my shoulder. My books are over my shoulder there. That is branding. That's not my brand, right? You were very kind to say in your introduction that I'm the biggest name you've had on, or whatever it is, or something like that. But I appreciate that. But what that means is that when you say, I want to have this guy on to speak about business, there's something you've seen, heard, read, watched, experienced that says something. I'm not going to say what your something is, but whatever that something is, that say, I want him on here, right? I want him on here. And for you to be kind enough to say that about me. I don't get to define my brand, right? I can tell you what my brand is, because I can tell you what other people have said. I can tell you that one of my favorite quotes about my speaking was a guy named Aldo Ryan, who's got an entertainment company here in New Jersey. And he said, Alan, you're probably the only speaker I can listen to without once looking at my watch. That's a great line, except the guy in Chicago saw that line and wrote, Alan, I was looking at my watch because I was hoping it wasn't over yet.
Wow.
Right? So that's my brand in terms of speaking. And then in terms of sales training, in terms of marketing, in terms of other things, I have quotes and I have quotes and I have quotes. hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of quotes because I've been doing this for a while. Right. I was vice president of the knot. I was there for 11 years. I've been out of the knot for about 12 years. So in 12 years, I've gathered some comments from people, right? Hundreds of comments. And the key is that when someone reads that comment, it's called social proof. The social proof says, not that I say you're going to benefit from this, but how you might benefit the same way they did. And this is no different than reading a restaurant review and reading about it. Like, I'll give you an example. My dad just turned 93, and my niece and they do a dinner date every once in a while. They're both down in Florida, and they went on this date, and it was an hour and a half drive each way and an hour and a half drive back. And my father loved it because he says he got 5 hours to spend with his granddaughter, right? The comments were, the ambiance of this place was beautiful. It was a great location. The ambiance was beautiful. The food was eh. If you read that on Yelp, or if you read that on Google, or if you read that on TripAdvisor, are you going to go? Right? Now, if all you care about is ambiance, I need a romantic place on the water, whatever, you might go, yeah, well, all right, the food was it wasn't terrible. It was I might go. But if you're looking for a good meal, you got a few other choices, right? So their brand, and it's funny because I was talking to my niece and asking her opinion, not just my dad's, and she said it was a beautiful place, whatever, and they won like best ambiance in this county or whatever. I said, what did they say about the food? Because they won best ambiance, and you guys love the ambiance. So if I were to say to a mobile bar owner, what is your brand? Your brand is not the look and style of your bar. The brand is how people feel when they experience that, both the host and the guests and the other vendors that are involved in that event, because everybody defines your brand. If the guests love it, but the other vendors think you're a jerk, well, that's your brand. And the industry is not going to recommend you because they think you're a jerk. But if the industry's like, oh, she's so helpful, or they're so helpful, or this is great. I love when I come on site and I see that this bar is there, I'm like, this is going to be a good night. Then that's your brand, right? And if somebody reads that review and says, anytime I see that XYZ bar is going to be there, I know it's going to be a good night. The next person's going to go, well, I want a good night. I want it to be a good night, right? So there's where your brand is. So the easiest place to do it is the public reviews you have, the private ones you have, the emails, the texts, the thank you notes. If you're not doing video testimonials at the end of the night, I highly suggest you take out your high definition camera that we all carry in our pockets these days. And when someone walks up to you and says, thank you so much, that was amazing, pull out your camera and say, hey, could you just say that over here on the recording so I can show other people? Not everybody's going to say yes, but most of them will. And then you have video testimonials, which you can then transcribe and use. But that's where the words are. You don't get to make the words up. You get to use their words, but you don't get to say their words.
I love that. And not least of which, because I just taught an entire lesson on social proof, and like video case study testimonials was
Yep.
part of that lesson. But I love that the step one here is to identify your brand. And to your point, you can look at your reviews, or you can look at some of the things that people are already saying. I think this is actually touched on a little bit in the book Talk Triggers, wherein he's like, look what people are already saying. What I love about that also is that you do have some control over what people say. If you choose what you want people to say, and then you reflect it back to them throughout your messaging and your sales pitch. And, I used to do this because my whole mission was to make great event bars easy. And so I would reflect that back to them and tell them, like, our goal is to make event bars easy. And our goal, did we make it easy for you? And then we'd start to see that show up in our comments and our feedback. They made it so easy. They made great event bars easy. And so you do have a little bit of control, only if you actually live up to what it is that you want to be known for. But to your point, if you're just getting started, you might not know what you want that to be. And so looking at your reviews after working a few events and hearing the feedback, what did you like most about working with us, or what was your favorite part about working with us, can really help you distill down what your zone of genius is if you're not already aware of what your zone of genius is, or what people like most about the way you make them feel. To your point, like the way you make people feel is really kind of that golden nugget. And so once we we identify what our brand is and what people, because again, it's down to what people value. It's not a commodity. So people aren't playing on price when we're working in this industry. We want people to see value in what we're doing. So in the sales process, how do we utilize our brand to close the
Well,
sale?
you actually use it before they even get to you. So there's 4 steps to getting more sales. When I teach sales training, I call it the sales cycle. So you first have to get someone's attention. And you get their attention through advertising, marketing, networking, all these different things that you do, social media. So use those words in those things. A big mistake I see people doing is on their websites, they have a testimonials page, which according to your Google Analytics will show you that nobody goes there. And the reason nobody goes there is it's your website. You put the things there. What are the chances you took the bad review and put it on that page on your site? So I've never seen a Google Analytics report that showed a testimonials page having more than 1 or 2% of the traffic. And it's usually that person looking at their own page there. I had, before I was putting reviews on, asking for reviews on Google, I had pages on my website. So going back 12 years ago, when I started, when I left the knot, I just created a blog page and I said, it was a testimonials page for speaking. There was another one for mastermind, another one for consulting. And people would post there themselves. I would respond to every review, which is important. I think we should get back to that, but it was respond to every review. And there, again, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And nobody went there. Nobody, only to post, but they didn't go there to read them. So what I have on every piece of marketing that I do, and I'm talking about bookmarks, business cards, postcards, handouts, anything I do, are single sentences that have been pulled out of those paragraphs that people said that speak to whatever you're talking about at that time. So if I'm talking about sales training, they're going to be a sales training testimonial. If I'm talking about a website review, it'll be a website review on and so forth in the books and so forth. So they're going to talk to those points to support them because you say it. Okay, good. You're supposed to say you're going to do this. Somebody says, yeah, they did that for me, right? They did that for me. They did that for my guests. That's much more powerful. So you want to pull those single sentences out, but don't put them at the bottom of the page. Another mistake I see people making. We as customers and visitors to websites know that we don't go all the way down to the bottom of the page yet. How many people put their reviews further down the page? Okay. Doesn't make any sense. Right? So think of them like speed bumps. And as you go through, there's your text talking about it. Actually, I'll give you a little quick thing. 4 things you want on every page of a website are aspirational images. I don't want to see your bar. I want to see people at the bar. I want to see people getting drinks, interacting with your bartenders and your particular bar style. I want you to talk to the visitor, the reader, about them, not about you. Don't start every paragraph with we. Now you're speaking French, or you. It should be you when you choose XYZ bar for your next event, you and your guests will you. I call it the you test. I literally search the page for the word you. It either appears or it doesn't. The third is the social proof. So if I talk about how fun and creative your bar is, if I as the bar owner, and then I have someone who say I love their quirky style, it fits, right? It supports it. And then the fourth is the call to action. Right? So tell me what to do to get that result. So show me the result, talk about the result, have someone support the result, tell me what to do. But then everything that you do should include that. So if you do any advertising, do any marketing, highlight the reviews in your social media, show a picture of that event with a review from that person, much, much stronger. Uh, Anything anybody touches of mine is going to have a review on it. So I have my favorite phrase, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. There's little postcards that I hand out, but the back of it says, why should you have industry guru Alan Berg train your sales team? And there's 4 testimonial quotes right there with attribution of who said it, where they are, and then a call to action. If you put the attribution on your website, so you say that this was so and so for their event, right? Whatever type of event, or if it's a company, whatever, and then the city state, it can help your SEO because now you're mentioning all these other towns that you've worked in or all these other venues you've worked at, and it can help that incrementally there. So everything somebody touches of mine, including a business card, all right, is going to have testimonials on it because, yeah, I'm supposed to say it's good, but you don't believe me the way you'll believe somebody else. So in your marketing, advertising, the videos, if you're doing the video testimonials, I have on my website, and I actually borrowed this idea from a client of mine who's a wedding band in Chicago. I take a few seconds of what somebody said, and then a few seconds of what somebody else said, and then a few seconds of what somebody else said. And I put them together into a 1 minute or a 90-second compilation so that it isn't just one person talking for 90 seconds about, oh, I love what Sarah did and it was great. It's somebody with a call to action at the end. And the beginning is the why. It literally says, why should you have Allenberg review your website? Or why should you have sales training by Allenberg? Or why? And then the answer is that. And then it tells you who each person is and stuff like that. So that's how you use it, is just like you've always seen on the, like you mentioned, Jay Baer's book, Talk Triggers. I'm sure there's testimonials on the back cover, right? I'm sure they're there. Every one of my books has testimonials on the back cover because we turn books over and we look to see why. And that's the key. Do you read a review before you buy somebody's book? Do you read a review before you decide to eat in that restaurant or buy that piece of equipment? Sure you do. I'm a bourbon guy. Do I read a review before I buy a bourbon? Yeah. Do I trust some reviews more than others? Yeah. Where are they? Did the person reply? All those different factors are going to matter.
Yeah, I love that. I think the study said that 90% of people making a purchase are going to seek some sort of social proof before committing, whether it's a referral from someone that they know and trust, or even just an online review. Honestly, we trust people we've never met, and we have no reference
Right.
point for anything about them, but we trust them more than not having that
Right.
anonymous
And
review.
then I'm listening to a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, who's great. And he was talking about that, that we believe these people, but there are some reviews that are more believable than others. And then there are algorithms to figure out which are the fake reviews versus the real reviews. I'm a prolific reviewer of restaurants and hotels because I travel so much. I've personally posted over 650 reviews on TripAdvisor, right? Yeah, personally. All right. And I'm a Yelp elite for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or whatever. So when I take the time to post a review, I want to post a believable review and not a review that's like, oh, I thought it was great and I think you should stay here, right? I talk about what it is. I talk about people by name. I'll talk about the dish I had. And if I'm with other people, maybe mention their dishes as well. So it's believable instead of it just being, oh, no, they paid this guy to post a great review. And the thing is, I don't post a review as much as I have 650. I don't post a review of every restaurant I eat in or every hotel I stay at. And the reason is it has to move the needle, right? It has to move the needle enough for me to say I'm going to do it. And I might even still be sitting on my desk here. I save the receipt from the restaurant. If I think I want to post a review, I might save it to remind me of what we had and do it like that. But when I take the time to post, I'm going to post a specific review so that when you're reading it, I want to post one that I would want to read. And let's say that I like this. I did like the restaurant with my dad and my niece. I would have said it was a great ambiance. It was beautiful on the water. The service was great. The steak, was just mediocre. So people can read it and know that balance and make their mind up. And then what I look for as a consumer is not just what are the other reviews, but if the platform allows it, are they responding to the reviews? So Google allows you to reply to reviews. Yelp allows you to reply to reviews. The Knot, Wedding Wire allow you to reply to reviews. And if you are on any of those platforms and it allows you to reply, TripAdvisor allows you to reply to reviews. If you're not replying to reviews, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to stand head and shoulders above the other people there. Because if I'm reading two good reviews and one of them has replies that are good, I'm going to say that are good replies, and the other one has no reply, I will go to the one that had a good reply because you now had the chance to be in the room. When I was reading this review, you had the chance to be in the room and say thank you in a meaningful way. And a meaningful way just means read what they wrote and say something about what they wrote. I hate when someone replies with this generic, like a hotel, thank you for taking the time to post your review. We can't wait to welcome you back. I'm thinking, did you read what I wrote? Right? Or there was one, what was it? Oh, the hotel was under renovation and it didn't say it on the website. It just said the restaurant was closed for renovation. And we show up and the hotel's under renovation and they're wallpapering in the hallway or whatever. I'm like, what gives? We could have gone down the road. We didn't have to come here. And I wrote the review and I got back something like, we're very excited about the renovation as well and can't wait for you to see it on your next visit or something like that. I'm like, no, I was complaining. Like, did you hear me complaining? Right. But that shows me they're not paying attention. I will also be courteous. If I have a problem, I will tell management. I won't go just to post a bad review. If you don't respond, I give you two chances. I'm really being generous. I give you two chances. If you don't respond, then I'm going to go to social, right? If you respond badly, I'm going to go to social because you had the chance. You had the chance to make it right. And I don't mean giving me anything. I don't mean you have to give me something. I don't go to you because I want a freebie. I go to you because you wouldn't know if I don't tell you. If I was the manager, I'd want to know. Every hotel manager I work with would want to know. And when I've had the opportunity to talk to some where I got a little bit of a runaround, you could hear their frustration. Like, what was it? Ritz Carlton in Santa Barbara. I asked for the manager's name and email, and they said, "Here's his assistant." Like, I didn't ask for his assistant. I asked for his name and email because he wasn't on property. And when I finally got to him and told him, and I said that's what happened, you could hear him rolling his eyes like, "That's not the way this works. A guest says, I want the manager's name and email. You give the guest the manager's name and email." So,
Yeah. As somebody who came through Cornell's hotel school, I worked pretty closely with Ritz-Carlton on their customer service expectations, and they're up there with like the
yeah.
best of the world. So I can imagine how he died inside a little bit
Yes.
hearing that. What I'm hearing you say, Alan, from the questions that we have addressed so far, is that a major part of the sales process happens before they even get into your lead funnel.
Right, right. Because think about what is our search process as consumers. If you haven't read the Barry Schwartz's The Paradox of Choice, it's one of my favorite books to recommend. It's the second book I ever listened to twice on audio, and I will probably listen to it again. It just talks about how we make decisions. But if you think about it, the paradox of choice in the world that we live in is we want to know we've seen all the choices when we're the consumer. But when shown all the choices, there's too many choices and we can't decide. Have you been on Amazon for anything? Right. And that's the paradox of choice. So I go on Amazon and I'm looking, I forget whatever the last thing I was looking for, and there's 7,000 choices. So what do? If you're like me, you click Prime, right? So now there's only 5,000 choices. And then you click 4-star or higher, and now there's 3,000 choices, right? And we try to narrow this down. I mean, even dating, right? Tinder, what is it? Swipe left is bad, I've heard. I don't know. I'm married a long time.
I've been
Yeah,
the same person since
yeah,
before dating
exactly.
apps, so I
But
don't
I've
know.
been told that swipe left is bad, but it's the same thing. It's a filtering process. So we always do a filtering process before we decide to make that inquiry. So the filtering process says, I'm going to cut this choice of, which could be, a dozen, or it could be dozens, or it could be hundreds, or it could be thousands, down to a small group that I think are going to be a good fit. But for whatever reason, I couldn't narrow it down to one, right? So if there was something so specific that I'm looking for that it ended up there was only one, I would have reached out to that company and that's it. But let's face it, if they need a mobile bar, they have choices, and they're going to cut it down and say, based upon what I'm seeing now, and this is why your website is so important. And if you're on social, you need to be active. I'm not saying you need to be on every platform. You want to be on the platform your customers are looking for you on. But if you're on the platform, you need to be active. You don't want somebody going and finding that the last time you posted was 6 months ago. If that's their platform, they're going to say, I'll find somebody else. So you want to go where they are. You want to be in front of them with the right information at the right time. And the goal of all of those things, your YouTube channel and your social media and your website and all, is to get you an inquiry. That's its goal, unless they can buy online. In the case, it's e-commerce. But I would imagine most people are not letting you buy online, right? They want to talk to you first. So your goal is one thing. So when I go to websites and I review websites, it's one of my services. I always look and go, well, why aren't you going towards your goal, right? Your goal is to get me to make an inquiry. It's not book us now, which I see that button all the time on websites. Well, if I click that, it should take me to e-commerce because it says book us now, but it doesn't. Right? So the goal of your website is to get the inquiry. Once you get the inquiry, they have eliminated most of your competitors. It could be 95%, 98%, 90%, depending on how many are in your marketing category. They've eliminated most of your competitors. Whatever it is they've seen, heard, like, experienced, whatever, they know they like that. Why would they take the next step? Right? So they've read your reviews. Like you said, 90% or more reading the reviews, they like what they've read. Going to take the next step. When they reach out to you at that point, you're in a small group. Could be 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It's probably not 20. There might be a couple of crazies out there that do that. What they realize is it's their fault to then get 20 replies, right? It's their fault. Although it's sad to say with all the secret shopping that I do that there are companies that don't reply at all, which is really sad. We're shopping 40 different companies right now, and there's at least 3 that haven't replied at all. And one of them was a client of mine that had me shop his people. And I said, we didn't get a reply. And he checked and found there was some issue that people weren't getting the inquiry. So we shopped them again and got no reply again. So it was not a technological problem. It's a people problem over there. So by the time you get that inquiry, your job is to continue the conversation that they have started, right? You're not cold calling. Cold calling is you starting a conversation. They started a conversation which said, I like what I've seen, read, heard, watched, or whatever. I want more information. It's likely they're going to ask you pricing because if there's no pricing on your website, they're going to ask. They also don't know how to shop for what you do because most people who are hiring a mobile bar, I would imagine, have never before hired a mobile bar. So what do you ask?
Mhm.
You're not equipped to ask the questions. When they do ask you the good questions, it's either because they've hired a bar before or they've talked to somebody else who gave them the education on what to ask. And none of us are immune to that.
Or they went to another website or talked to another mobile bar that was better at you at creating the expectation of these are the questions you should
Right,
be
right. Which
asking.
again, they're never equipped to that beginning. My most popular book, "Shut Up and Sell More Weddings and Events," I tell a story. On the other side of the wall behind my monitor here is my baby grand piano. That when we built this house 12 years ago, we got the piano, and I wanted to protect it from the sun's rays because it killed my grandmother's piano, which was the baby grand I was supposed to get. So I wanted window tinting, UV window tinting that was residential. That was I wanted, what did I want? I want, oh, in my area. So I was searching and I did my search for central New Jersey residential window tinting for UV protection. Some really long search. Well, when I went to their websites, I found they were in my area. I found they did residential. I found they did UV. So when I reached out, I didn't know what else to ask. And I did not want to ask price because I teach this stuff. And I was like, don't ask them how much. I'm thinking, well, what else do you ask them? They're in your area. They do UV. They do houses. What else they ask? So I did it. It killed me. And I sent this email and said, how much is it to tint the windows? And when the first guy got back to me 15 minutes later on a Saturday night, by the way, 9:30 at night on a Saturday, and he said, well, I need to come and measure the windows and see how many there were. I'm like, duh. I didn't say I have this many windows. They're this big, this high up. How much is it? So what if he had come back and said it's this much per square inch or something? Like now I have to measure the windows and get on a ladder, right? So it was a stupid question, but it wasn't a stupid question. It was a natural question to ask when you ran out of questions. And if you have no questions, like a mobile bar, how much is it, right? Or you're standing online at the supermarket and you have a jacket on and it says, Amy's mobile bar service, right? And somebody taps you on the shoulder, oh, hey, we're having a party. How much is a mobile bar, right? That's what they're going to ask you. They're not going to say, tell me about your bar, right? But so it's just human nature that the people are going to do that. So by the time they reach out to you, you're supposed to continue the conversation that they have started. But what you're supposed to do is talk about the results that they want. So one of the chapters in the book, I actually got this from a client of mine, a rental company in Westchester, New York. And he said they always ask 3 questions when they get an inquiry. What's the occasion? Who's coming? And what does success look like? Right? And that's my version of his 3 questions. Well, what's the occasion? We need to know. We're having a barbecue. We're having a festival. We're having a wedding in the backyard, right? We're having a whatever. Who's coming, right? You need to know that as a mobile bar, right? I was at a wedding recently that was from 4 years old to 93. Kind of want to know that going in, right? Right? And it was a glatt kosher wedding. Kind of want to know that going in also, right? Okay. And then what does success look like? And this is a harder question because people have never experienced it, so they may not know what success looks like. So that's where you have to ask better questions. And that's why Shut Up and Sell More is my most popular book, because you don't learn by talking, you learn by listening. So if you say to someone, what's been your experience? What the last event that you went to, right? Did you go and get a drink at the bar? Yeah. What was your experience? Right? Just leave it very open. And if they say, oh gosh, I had to wait 15 minutes to get a drink, or the bartender didn't know how to make this particular drink, or I went up to the bar, like me, I'm a bourbon guy. So I went up and said, what kind of bourbon do you have? And if they say Jim Beam, I said, well, what kind of wine do you have? Because you didn't even try. I'm sorry, but I'm going to say that out loud now. But if the only bourbon you have on your bar is Jim Beam, you're not even trying, right? Woodford Makers, everybody would be happy with that. Jim Beam, sorry, I wouldn't put it in my car, right? Just done. I'm just saying, I'll get off my soapbox in a minute, but
You've only got fans on
okay.
this podcast who
Well,
feel the same.
I have to show you. So this is how crazy the Bergs are, because we have our own barrel. I have a 3-liter barrel where we blended a bunch of other bourbons that we bought into here and added toasted French oak and toasted sugar maple chips into the barrel. So it's re-aging.
Oh, very nice.
And the front of the barrel says it's the Berg B Team blends blended in New Jersey. You got a problem with that? It actually it says that both on the barrel and on the labels that we have made, because I'm a marketer, so I can't leave well enough alone. So we have our own bottles with their own labels, with their own hang tags that tell you what's inside there. So yeah, so okay, so I digress. In terms of, you get the inquiry. So think about it. By the time you got the inquiry, the need has been established. And this is something I tell people all the time. And again, it's part of my books here. They already need what you do. You don't have to sell them
That's right.
what you do. You have to sell them why what you're going to do for them is going to get them the results that they want. The thing is,
Right.
they don't know how to ask for things they've never seen. So you might do things that they've never seen. Right? So if somebody's making an old fashioned and they're going to, smoke the glass, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. And your bartender might do it a different way. I was at a kind of a speakeasy and the guy was pouring something out onto the marble top of the bar and lighting it on fire and then smoking the glass on the bar. He wasn't happy with me when I asked for my bourbon neat, because that's how I drink it. It was like, there was no smoking. There was no zesting. There was no, sorry. I like the bourbon, I like to drink it neat. So what is the result that they want? What are the experience that they want for their guests? And you could lead the witness, like you were saying before, in terms of the review, you can lead the witness. Have you ever been to a bar where, they didn't have a decent selection? Have you ever been to a bar where you had to wait too long? Have you ever been to an event where the bar was too far away from where you, whatever, right? And if they're like, oh yeah, and you say, well, would it make sense? Which is a great way to ask for a sale, by the way. Would it make sense to have 2 different bar locations so that you can, right? And you're not selling it. You're selling the result, which is, would it make sense to have 2 different bar locations so that when they're over there, they can get a drink. When they're over here, they can get a drink without having to cross through the dance floor or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're helping them buy. And that's why this new book is called Stop Selling and Help Them Buy Weddings and Events. You don't have to sell them. They already need it, right? If you're walking down the street knocking on doors, you're selling, right? Encyclopedias, vacuum cleaners, whatever, something like that. But if they're coming to you, to your website, to your social, emailing you, calling you, texting you, WhatsApping you, whatever, and saying, how much is it for a mobile bar? They already need what you do.
Yes. Yes, they do. And I always tell people, if they've dropped into your lead funnel, they have asked for your time, attention, and support. And so if you ghost them, or if you fail to follow up with them appropriately, then you're not doing
Right.
them a service. So let's talk a little bit about follow up, because that is, I can't tell you, Ellen, how many times I'll ask people what their lead funnel looks like or their nurture funnel looks like. And they're like, well, we send them the proposal and then we'll follow up one more time to see if they have any questions. And then they're dead to us.
Now you're from Brooklyn. You're from Brooklyn now.
That's
You're
not
dead to
enough,
me.
right?
You're dead to me. That's it.
Well, I'm from New York
Okay. Well,
originally, so
I'm born and raised in New York City, Queens. So I changed my accent when I moved to New Jersey. So that's a New York joke. So there you go. Funny. One of the chapters in the new book is, should you use formal proposals? And I actually hate formal proposals, because formal proposals create this gap, right? The first thing is, if you know what you do and you've done it for enough time, there's no reason that it will take you time to come up with a proposal more than a couple of minutes, right? If it's taking you more than a couple of minutes to come up with a proposal for something that you do every day, something's broken in the process. Okay.
you don't know what
You
you
don't know
do
what you
in that
do.
case.
And this includes, and this is when I'm talking to caterers, I'm talking to florists, right? I'm talking to people that could, extensive menus and things. If you know what you do, right? You're a mobile bar service, you know what you do. And I would imagine that some of your listeners have liquor licenses and some of them don't, right? So some of them are providing alcohol, or providing the alcohol itself, and some of them are not, right? So whatever, you have an idea what this is, you should be able to give them at least a range of a quote. and say, well, you know what, that's going to be between here and here for that event. And you'll have a pretty tight range. Does something like that work? Yes. Okay. Or I need to, I need to go back to the boss. Okay. Well, tell the boss, depending upon the actual, bottles that you choose or how many signature cocktails you want or whatever, you're going to be between here and here. Right. And then you want to find out what is the next step. I have these other postcards that say ambiguous next steps bring ambiguous results, right? So follow up. It's not up to the customer to follow up with you. From the initial inquiry all the way through the sale, it's not up to the customer to follow up with you. It's up to you to follow up. We know that if it's a wedding, according to the Knot, and I'm sure this carries through to other things, according to the Knot and Wedding Wire, couples choose the first one who responds about 50% of the time, okay? So that's a big enough reason to get back to people quickly. And what does quickly mean? It means as quickly as you can. That's what it means. If you can get back to them within minutes, get back to them within minutes. If it's hours, it's hours. If you're watching your kid's dance recital or soccer game or whatever, watch the game, turn off your phone, take pictures. But just that's it. Don't be doing work there. Right. I'm a dad too. So that's it. But get back to them as quickly as you can. And what we find in our secret shopping is most companies are pretty good at that. Most companies will get back to them the same day if they can, by the next day if they can. Most, not all, but most will do that. What we also find is that's it. Most of them just stop. They just stop. Now think about it. You're a consumer. You've done your research. You've gone to 3 or let's call it 5 different websites for 5 mobile bars. You sent out 5 inquiries. You get 5 responses back. If you don't get that back immediately, and I don't mean an auto reply, I mean a reply from someone immediately, you're doing something else. That's what we do as humans. We don't sit there staring at our computer screen going, am I going to get a reply now? Am I going to get a reply now? We just go on to doing something else. We go to work, whatever. We have lives. We do other things. Then you get that reply in, and there's a couple of things you can do to get a fast reply from them. The first is, does it fit on one screen of their smartphone? If it doesn't, they're going to do what we all do. You open up your phone, you go to your email, you look at the subject line and who sent it. And you go, oh, it's from the mobile bar. The subject line's a good subject line. It's like, can we pour a drink for you, Sarah, right? That would be a good subject line because we go, oh, Sarah, name's in there. It's kind of fun. Okay. I open the email up. It's 2 screens long. I don't have time for that. We don't read, we scan. That's what we do. Nobody reads. We scan.
Nobody reads.
And we scan from the top left to the bottom right, according to my graphic designer son, from the top left to the bottom right, then over to the left, and then maybe back up to the top right. Well, if this is 2 screens long on your phone, sorry, we're not reading it, right? A couple of people will. Most people won't. They'll close it up, say, I'll get back to it later. They may not. So fit it on one screen of their phone. Did you put attachments? Did you put links? Those are all reasons for them not to respond to you, right? I wrote a whole book called Why Are They Ghosting Me? Right? There are 9 reasons why they're ghosting you. 8 of them are your fault. And some of the reasons they're your fault is it's too long. You're asking for a call or meeting right away. If they wanted a call or meeting, they would have asked or they would have called you.
Especially millennials. We don't
And
want to talk to
we're
you.
talking Gen Zs now also, right? And then attachments. They open on their phone, but they're tiny because you made 8.5 by 11s or 11 by 17s, shrunk them down to a phone screen. And they're dead ends. A dead end means if you end your message with a period or an exclamation point, the conversation is over, right? I look forward to hearing back from you, period. We can't wait to work with you, exclamation point. You've emphatically ended that conversation. Why should I get back to you if you say, we look forward to working with you? There's no action. 0. The simplest thing, there's an officiant in Southern California, Alan Katz. His company does like 2,000 ceremonies a year. It's great officiants, it's called. And we were driving to dinner one night when I was in California, and he just dropped on me. I always have my people end every email with a question. It gets people to respond better. Duh. The simplest thing. The simplest thing. It's actually, he's credited in the book. I wrote a book called Why Don't They Call Me? Right. And then followed it up with Why Are They Ghosting Me? And the dedication has Alan Katz in there because it's just such a simple thing, but it's so powerful. If I scan your message and there's a paragraph, which is one sentence by itself, which is the question, and then the only thing after that is your name, that's what I'm going to see. And if it's an easy question, then I'll answer it quickly. If it's a hard question, like what's your vision for your mobile bar? Not everybody can answer that. And I have two sons,
Right.
graphic designer, financial analyst. Graphic designer's son is going to want to think about his vision. Financial analyst doesn't know how to answer that question. Because what do you mean by my vision? Like coming in on budget, right? It's just a different brain, right? It just doesn't work the same way.
Yeah.
So the keys to getting them to reply to you are making it easy to reply. Don't give me links to your YouTube channel. Don't give me links to your social media. By the time they reach out to you, they don't need that. What they need is a person
Mm.
to talk to them. I'm doing air quotes talk because it's through our fingertips most of the time because they filled out your contact form. Now, unless you don't have a phone number on your website, which in the last 2 months, I've had 2 companies that I've worked with have not had phone numbers on their websites. One of them didn't know it, believe it or not, didn't know it because it's called the curse of knowledge. You proofread what's there, not what's missing, right? The other one knew it and had the worst, lamest excuse for not having one. And what they said was, well, we're out of the office all the time. We're not really available to answer the phone. I said, that is the lamest excuse for not having a phone on a website. Like voicemail, answering service, right? Two easy choices right there. Forget about call forwarding even. Voicemail, answering service. So I said I would go with answering service because answering service, a person answers the phone, takes a message, people will leave a message with a person more likely than with your voicemail. But to not have it because you think, right, well, we're not available. Or I had a DJ, he said, well, they don't want to call me anyway. I said, how would you know? Like your phone number is not on your website. How would you know they don't want to call you? So 3 months later, when I spoke to him, because he added it, he said, I get mostly spam like I thought, but 2 mothers of brides called him. Right. Not Gen Z, not millennials, baby boomers, right? Gen X's. They picked up the phone and called you.
I have a quick little anecdote because I preach this, put your phone number in your website. And I preach this as much as I can. And I did it on Instagram once where I was like, if you don't have your phone number in your on your website, you need to go right now and put it in there. And someone responded back, they're like, oh, I don't. I'm so scared of the spam. And I'm like, I promise you, the spam is like you can ignore it, it's fine, but you have to have your number in your on your website. And 3 hours later, I'm not kidding, it was 3 hours. She's like, Sarah, you won't believe this. I just got a call from a corporate event planner. They have been searching for a mobile bar that they could actually speak with. It's a $3,000 event, and I
There you
just
go.
closed it within
Right.
three
Crazy.
hours.
Right. And the same thing with follow up. So I've written about this. I've spoken about this. I did a podcast on this. And the guy that got me started on my podcast is also a DJ. He was my producer in the beginning. And he listened one weekend. He said, I'm just going to listen to the episode on following up again. My podcasts are 5 to 10 minutes, literally 5 to 10 minutes, right? Just like the chapters in my book. This new book, you can read it in any order. You really don't have to go front to back. Just pick a chapter. And he went back to months worth of leads. Not this week, not last week, months, some of which he had had a conversation of some sort. Could have been digital, could have been phone, whatever, some of which he had never heard back from at all. And he said, I'm just going to try again. What do I have to lose? He booked 5 weddings. Okay. I spoke in Ireland last year, and a hair and makeup person came to the event, wrote to me a couple of weeks later. She followed up with 5 brides that had been ghosting her, booked 3 weddings. And that was just trying one more time, right? The whole key is if you have not heard no, you have to follow up again. That's it. And I'm okay with no. I am perfectly fine to hear no from someone. I would rather hear no than not hear anything because now I can move on. And if you have another option, if there's an option for a future event, like with a corporate customer, right? Maybe not for this one. You say, oh, thanks. Thank you for letting us know about this one. What's the next event you have coming up we might be interested in? Okay. So ask again. But if you haven't heard no, you have to follow up again. And you follow up again, because stuff happens, right? Maybe the other bar fizzled out on them, or maybe they found the need was bigger, or maybe somebody is going to come back and say, you know what, that bar is kind of boring. Is there something more interesting? Well, there's this horse trailer one. They were a little bit more money, but we could do that. Well, it's not about the money. We want the look, right? So you have to follow up. I'll give you a funny story with me. A guy filled out my website form, and I happened to be sitting at my desk. He came in and I called him right away, right? If there's a phone number, called him right away, especially corporate customers, right? Called him right away. He didn't have to answer. He answered. Happened to be on a Friday. Well, and I'm talking minutes, like minutes. Right? It came in and he's getting a phone call. And he said, he's telling me a little bit about what he needs. He says, you know what? It's Friday. It's kind of busy. Any chance we can talk next week? I said, great. How about Monday at 2? Never say to somebody what's good for you because they're going to say, I don't know, Sarah, what's good for you? No, Alan, you tell me what's good for you. Oh, no, you tell me what's good for you. Right. By the way, this is the same whether you're going to dinner or watching a movie or whatever, right? Always give a choice of 1 or 2. They can always suggest something else. I said, "Hey, sure, Monday. How about Monday at 2 o'clock?" He goes, "That's great." I sent him a calendar invite. I called him Monday at 2. He didn't answer. Okay, people get busy. Stuff happens, right? Or like you and I were talking before we got on, our Google Calendar just doesn't put it in there for whatever reason. So I follow up with an email. I follow up again with an email. I follow up again with an email. I call again, leave a message, right? I'm following up. So then I let it sit a little bit. And then I followed up again with an email, didn't hear back. And then I sent him an email. Now he reached out to me, right? Who started this? He started this. I didn't start this. He started this. Asked about sales training for his people. Okay. So I sent him an email and I said, "Don't you wish your team was as persistent as I am?" And this is after like 6 or 7 contacts, right? And I got an immediate reply. And he said, "Yes, I do. I've just been really busy, been distracted by other things." But the conversation is continuing, right? That's the point. He could have come back and said, "Yes, I wish, yes, they do, but I found somebody else to help them," or whatever, something like that, which would have been fine as well. And it's still open and it's still open. And the only reason I'm not following up more now is I'm just too darn busy, right? And I don't know what's with this summer, but people keep coming to me. I just had a guy reach out to me from Georgia and about sales training. And I said, "When were you thinking to come?" He goes, "I was thinking soon. What does July look like?" Well, we're in June now, right? And I'm like, July's busy. July's really, really busy between personal and business stuff. It's busy. August is really busy. And I was kind of hoping he would say September when I'm not as busy. Or actually, I'm a little bit busy. Yeah, I'm kind of looking for December now, right? Now I'm fitting people in if I can fit him in. And I told him, I said, "Listen, July 26th. If you want me in July, that's going to be the date, right? I'm on my way to Florida. I can
Oh,
stop in
that's nice.
Georgia. I can do that." So now it's up to him if that date works or not. But it's better than, "Oh, well, Alan can come anytime in July." No, he can't. No, no, no.
Nope.
That's when he can come. And it's not me creating scarcity. There is actual scarcity there. I don't play those games with people. If I'm open, I'll tell them, I can do over here. I just need to know soon. And it's next month. I mean, let's come on, here you go. But who started this? He did. Now, one of the things that in that conversation, if I showed it to you, you'll see that every time I email him, I ask a question. Because if I don't ask a question, then I'm waiting for him to get back to me. And if you're going to follow up with someone, can you add value to the conversation? In this case, could I add, like, I actually have to get back to him because I did give him 2 dates. I said I can go July 6th or 7th or the 26th, and something just came up on the 5th. So now I can't even do the 6th, right? So I'm going to go back and say, well, actually, now it's only the 7th or the 26th. And again, it's creating scarcity because it's there, not
Right.
creating scarcity because I'm just playing
Right.
games with him. So, but the follow up, every time I email him, it fits on one screen and it ends with one question. Unless
Mm.
somebody writes me a long message, then they'll read my long message. If you write me War and Peace, you will read a long message. But if you don't, if you're sending me sound bites and I send you War and Peace, there's no way you're reading that. No way you're reading that. Right. And that's why we're mirroring,
Yes.
mirror
Oh,
style, mirror tone. He's not writing Alan on it anymore, right? Or Dear Alan or Hi Alan. It's just right to the message. Well, I just mirrored that back and I don't keep adding his name in the beginning of it because he doesn't add my name in the beginning of it. I'm mirroring the style. You won't notice the mirroring. You'll notice the lack of mirroring because it creates friction. Right? You'll notice a difference in
mhm.
tone. If his tone is casual, my tone is formal. He'll notice that. If my tone matches his, he won't notice. Kind of like body language, right? I talk with my
Yeah.
hands. Well, if we're together and I'm talking with my hands and you're not talking with your hands, I clasp my hands together because they want to move. And if you're not doing that, I'm going to kind of freak you out with this New York hand thing going because it just does, right? You know what I'm talking about. It just does, right? But if I'm with someone who's quiet, I speak quiet. If I'm with someone who's loud, you end up getting louder. My language will get saltier to a point. I won't necessarily match your saltiness, but it might get a little saltier if that's who I'm with. I've had this again in the New York area. I've had, it's not uncommon in Brooklyn, or the Bronx for the language to go a little different.
Yeah, we've got one word that works in all scenarios, so why not use
And
it?
it's just like punctuation, and there you go. But this is the point in messaging too: is are we mirroring their style? Are we mirroring how much they write? That was in my book. Why don't they call me? I talk about the mirroring there, mirroring the tone, mirroring the energy. I'll give you emojis. I have emojis. I have me-mojis. I have a me-moji that scarily looks like me, right? But I'm not going to use it if you're not using them, because I might look too informal or unprofessional in a professional setting. Where if you send me an emoji, it's like, oh, all bets are off now, right? You've just unlocked my emoji drawer and I can now emoji you back. But this is just business, is that we do this. We should be doing it subconsciously, but sometimes we have to do it consciously. But follow up. How many times do you follow up? You follow up until you hear yes or no, right? Now, how do you get a
Mm,
no? Make it easy for them, right? Sometimes just send them one sentence. Are you still looking for, for a cool mobile bar for your next event? Are you still looking for, something different and creative for the mobile bar for your next event? And let them come back and say, hey, thanks, but I've chosen someone else. It's okay. It
yeah,
really is. If you closed every
yeah,
lead you got, you can't handle it. Or I should say, if
unless you
right.
scale.
Right. But again, and when is it, right? Like if it's next year, you can scale. If it's next week, it's harder to scale. But you should, and by the way, scaling should be because of demand, not in anticipation of demand. It should be because of the demand.
Yeah,
Just like discounting is because you're encouraging behavior that isn't happening, as opposed to, just discounting just because people like to get a discount. No, that's a terrible reason for doing it, or because your competitors do. It's just like having different pricing for different days. Why? I call them your A plus dates, your A dates, your B dates, your C dates. You should not be discounting your A plus dates, the dates that you're going to book. If you do weddings, you should be booked every Saturday in October. It's the busiest month in this country for weddings, period. It's going to continue to be that. There's no reason to be discounting that. There's no reason to be, selling any low kind of a package on a Saturday night in October for weddings. There's no reason to, right? But if nobody's beating your doors down for Wednesdays, well, you might have a different price for Wednesdays than you do for Saturdays. That's okay. You're encouraging behavior that isn't happening on its own.
oh my gosh, Alan, you've been so generous with your time today. And I could keep talking to you all day long about this. But I'm going to ask you, where can people find more of you? We know that you have a podcast, the Wedding Business Solution Podcast, 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's amazing. We know that you have 6, almost 7 books out, and I'm going to go purchase at least 2 of them based on what you said. Where can are you a speaker at Wedding MBA? Where else can we get more of Alan Berg?
So I've spoken at every wedding MBA they've ever had since the first one. I am the only one who has done that. Back when I was at the Knot, I was vice president of sales. Was the first time I spoke at Wedding MBA when we had 300 or 400 people. Now they get 5,000, but I've been at every one of those. So thank you. Yes, I'm speaking 3 times there, and I'll have a booth. My website, alanberg.com, ALANBERG.com, has links to everything. Podcast.alanberg.com takes you to a page that has links to Apple, Google, YouTube, Spotify, you name it. It's got links to all of those on there. My books, if you like paperback, shopalanberg.com. And if you use the coupon code podcast, you'll get free shipping on me. Anything in there, the new books, the old books. The new book is there for pre-sale now. And if you're listening to this after July, you'll get it right away. And the links to the podcast. It's not every day though. Thank you. But it's a once a week, 5 to 10 minutes. Every other Monday I have a guest on, goes about 30 minutes. We started about 2 years ago. There's, I think, 170 podcasts up there. And we're at 160,000 downloads. And then on YouTube, there's tens of thousands more. So they're on video as well with captioning. And then most of my books, waiting on the new one, but todos mis libros disponibles en español, si necesitas. So if you need any of the books in Spanish, they're all there for paperback and Kindle in Spanish.
Perfecto. Thank you so much for your time today, Alan.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This has been fun. And you're right. We could just keep talking about this all day.
Well, we should maybe do this again sometime.
Let's do it. Pick another topic. Let's do it.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I would love to hear from you what you thought. You can drop me a line at hello@mobilebevpros.com or find me on Instagram at mobilebevpros. If you're looking for more valuable mobile bar related content, we have a website full of it. You can find us at www.mobilebevpros.com. And I'd love to see you in our Facebook community, also by the name of, you guessed it, Mobile Bev Pros. Thank you for joining me today, and until next time, cheers.